Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
This week's RTÉ GAA podcast is contemplating shaving like Anthony Daly. Welcome on to a new and different RTÉ GAA podcast. We are going to continue coming to you in your podcast apps and hopefully via YouTube and other video platforms also, if my video editing skills are up to scratch. This week I'm joined by Rory O'Neill, Sunday Game producer, Anthony Daly, clean-shaven, former Clare captain, and Brendan Cummins, goalkeeper extraordinaire, who is obviously of some use to us because what we're doing here is we are picking the all-star team of the Sunday Game era. We are trying to pick the definitive 15 hurlers to have played the game and won an all-star since 1979. So we're starting at the start with goalkeepers. And first of all, quick straw poll. Who here has played in goal in hurling at some point? Brendan, we know you have. Rory?
I did. I played once under 15. I think we were playing the bars, and I got a belt of a sliotar in and around the inside of my leg, and that was it. Never again. The pain was just, and I swear it was like it was. Do you remember the time Nash hit Stephen O'Keefe with that rocket of a shot?
Yeah.
And he posted the picture on social media afterwards, and the big huge bruise on the side of his leg. It was like somebody had taken a mallet to his thigh. Like that's what the inside of my leg, and it came very close to ending my family fortunes. So that was the end of my goalkeeping days.
Daly?
So Stephen O'Keefe's leg brought you back, Rory, to your own. What a moment of bravery that was by O'Keefe. In fairness, he just came up and said, "You can hit me if you like, because you're not hitting the net." It was incredible. I actually played in goal, Mike, in the Kilmacud Sevens a few times for a few minutes for Clarecastle when we'd be absolutely gassed. You could swap the goalie. That was about it. But I stood in goal now for a good few penalties over the years. Myself and Liam Doyle used to be the two chosen to stand in with the Bowl Davy. With a bit of success as well. But he always kind of wanted us to stand maybe a foot behind him just in case we get in the way of his save. You know the way they are now.
Yeah, 100%.
Brendan, would you have preferred to have played in the era of the one-on-one penalty?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it would have been great. The likes of Dale, like I had Paul Curran beside me, Raymond Corcoran shouting, please save it, save it, like, you know what I mean? It's guys for above and Thurles one day. You talk about the speed of penalties, and DJ Carey took a penalty against us one Saturday evening in the league game, and Paul Shelley was to my right, and he threw it up and hit it, and Shelley turned to me and said, "Where's it gone?" And I said, "It's between your legs. It'll roll, hit the net and come back out against him." But looking at the video footage of it afterwards, it actually passed in between his head and the post. So he never saw it. He never heard it. So I can tell you what the likes of Dale will be at in the goals with you.
Well, I'll tell you one thing on that, Brendan. In the Ireland semi-final, a bigger game, myself, Tyler and Davy again, and DJ, it had to be DJ, of course, stepped up anyway, and a rocket, and of course Fitzy went for it, missed it. I didn't even see it, hit me on the shin bone. You're on about your leg, Rory. Hit me on the shin bone anyway, and Fitzy roll lifted it and drove it down the field. And then as I was making my way in under the Hogan, the old Hogan, that time, Fitzy was surrounded that time by the media scrum of the reporters. And so what about the save from the penalty? Well, lucky enough, he says, I got across the jaw. I said, I looked down on my leg. I said, go away. I said, that's me out.
I love it. Okay.
You gotta love it.
Here I have the, so we ran a poll on the RT website with an article by Owen Ryan, where he extolled the virtues of Brendan Cummins particularly. Owen is a man. He was born in Athlone by accident. He's a Tipperary hurling fan, and
he knows his goalies as well. Just before you say any more,
yeah, well, he does. And so we had a poll. Over 6,000 people voted. So you can imagine the top of the pops music in your head now. I'll give you the top 10. At 10, Anthony Nash. At 9, Tommy Quaid. At 8, Pat McClockney, Tipperary. At 7, Noel Skean. At 6, Dunrogue, Cusack. At 5, Ger Cunningham. At 4, Davy Fitzgerald. At 3, Owen Murphy. At 2, Damien Fitzhenry. And at 1, Anthony Daly. No, Brendan Cummins.
Not that boy. Where do I click the
Get in there. Get in there.
And it wasn't even close, Brendan. You had 1,800 votes. Fitzy had 1,400. And I'm afraid Owen Murphy's coming in third with about 600 votes.
I have a big family. We made a big drive around the parish. Everyone is locked in. We just made sure we correlated the votes right.
You're driving around Ballybacon saying, get out and vote.
I got a load of van they use for the
Get out and vote and wash your hands.
Yeah. Right, Brendan, we are gonna talk about how brilliant you are shortly, but I'm actually interested, seeing as you can't vote for yourself, who do you think is the best goalkeeper since 1979?
Damien Fitzhenry. Don't even have to think about it. He's the man. He was always the benchmark for me when I played. Every time I trained and I wasn't feeling great, I'd think of Fitzhenry training below in Wexford, and I'd say I'd have to be better than him every day of the week. And he was really the one. Since the day I saw him playing those league finals, that they ended up losing, the Wexford Creamery top, leaning on the hurley, looking out like he was at an old challenge game in the club, so relaxed and cool, had puck outs, he had everything. He was the man for me, and he was the role model, I suppose, when I saw him before I started playing senior inter-county, and all through my career, he was always the benchmark for me. So all day long, it's Damien.
You agree, Dalo, don't you? He was up there for you too.
Well, yeah, I thought, he gave some massive displays of pucking out as well. We think of the famous 204 Leinster final when he just had to hit space what he was told and forced the Kilkenny backs to run, really, and Wexford forwards were in total motion on the day. And I know they got lucky at the end with Mick Jacob, I think, getting a late goal. But, yeah, well, when I had to pick two, the crack for the last few weeks, which were only allowed 2 from each county. So, sorry, Brendan, I needed Nicky in. And I think I needed Paddy Maher in, or I think it was the Paddy or Tommy Dunn. I wanted 2 in anyway, or Lahey or Declan, I don't know. So I went for Fitzhenry as one of my 2 Wexford players that I'd have in when you had only allowed 2 from each county. But yeah, he was a great keeper. But sure, look, it was a golden age for keepers between yourself and between the man behind me. None more so Joe Quaid as well at the time. I think was an unbelievable shot stopper. So it really, I think we had a few great goalies. I mean, even Seamus Jurek is mentioned, and you could vote for him. I remember the Duke was one of my heroes, of that great Clare team in the 70s, and he kind of was the first man to sort of marshal this sort of thing of the goalie coming off his line solo running, because he used to play wing forward for his club out the field. Damien played a lot of his hurling out the field. Brendan, you probably played a lot of. You played all your football out the field anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, I played a lot of hurling out the field. Actually, my father was in the goals, and I had to play midfield, so I couldn't get my place. And I was minor, so I played midfield. And his claim to fame always is that I couldn't dislodge. He had to retire for me to play in the goals. So yeah, I had a bit, but I just think though you're right. The modern goalie, and it's probably where it's gone now, with only 2 being played in the full forward line. The modern goalie is a sweeper keeper. And in a lot of ways, like you see Pep Guardiola going for a guy who can use his feet, managers are now certainly using a player who could play his full back as comfortably as they could play in the goals. And we've seen that evolution, I think, in goalkeeping over the last 5 or 6 years with the way teams are going about trying to play with 2 inside. So it certainly gives more room. We've goalies scoring points now from play, and the Roland has certainly done it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, we are seeing that happening. And I think it's because the tactics in the game is giving the goalie more freedom now than he would ever had to come outside the square.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was just wondering, when you think about Fitzhenry, I can't think about Fitzhenry without thinking of Ger Cush and the advantage of having I'm sure Ger won't mind me saying this, a fairly much a homicidal maniac standing 6 yards in front of you who would pull on anything that moves. That really helps, doesn't it, Brendan?
It does. Like, I mean, a high ball coming into the square, like all that drops in front of you is an arm with a ball in it, because he's after cutting it off the fella in front of him. He just removed the ball from the fingers, roll lifted and moved to the side. I mean, it is. And I played behind Philip Maher. I played behind Noel Sheehy, who played in an All-Ireland final in 1997 against Dalo's crew there. and his hamstring was torn, you know, and he'd be grinding his teeth looking at you, you know, oh, we have to keep him out, you know what I mean? And it was just a war. Everything was the beach landing and Saving Private Ryan. That was just the way it was. Whereas nowadays, he could end up playing wing back as quick as full back, like.
Yeah, and Brendan, but you still have running battles with your various fullbacks about keep him out of here and this kind of, because I listened to that for 10, 11 years with Lohan and Fitzy. Get him out of here, get him out of here.
Yeah.
You know, and Lohan back at him by the same, shut your mouth, I'll have you do yours, you know.
I wasn't too bad until Paul Curran arrived on, and Paul was a very deep character, totally committed. Now, it was a game of tiddlywinks. Paul wants to win it and is gutted for months if he loses it, right? But if you left in a soft one, normally full back would turn around and say, you know, come on, don't worry about next ball. Paul would turn around, he'd grit the teeth, Jesus Christ! And you go, I'm sorry, Paul. And he turned his back and walked out.
I'm not worried about the 30,000 Tipperary fans that are here. I'm more worried about you, Paul.
Yeah, well, he's the closest fella to me with a hurl in his hand, so that's the danger.
Brendan, just having read Christy, was it Christy or was it Dennis? It was Christy O'Connor, wasn't it, that did Last Man Standing, the book? Because he was a goalkeeper himself, or he is a goalkeeper himself. And the one thing that came across was that you needed to be slightly mad. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think you have to have an unbelievable self-confidence, bordering on cocky, arrogant, crazy person. Because you are alone with your own thoughts, like, for a lot of the time. Like, the ball's not in your area. If you think about most fellas out the field only touch the ball on average maybe 6 or 7 times in a game. In the goals, right, and puck out, you might have only 2 or 3 key moments where you're needed by the group. So you have to be comfortable in your own head. And I think that's the key for any goalie. Some of them were external, like Davy, where they roared everyone. Me and Fitzhenry probably devote the kind of a style of more cool, calm looking, maybe under the water like the swan, the legs are going mad. But there has to be something quirky about you, and that's just the way it is. And any goalie I've dealt with, the good ones especially, there is something quirky about them, all right.
And they do tend, like goalkeepers, if you look at them, like I know Fitzhenry is involved with, well, he certainly was involved with Wexford behind the scenes. You're obviously involved in coaching. Davy, Cusack is he's in with the minors, and I'm sure he'd have ambitions. What is it about goalkeepers that makes them small, you know, I suppose more tactically astute? Is it because you're sat back there on your own, kind of facing out to the play?
Yeah, I think we have the mentality as goalie is prevention is better than cure. So if you can move your players around the chessboard in front of you to stop problems, because you have a full view of the pitch all the time, you have no fear of someone hitting you down the head with the hurley, so you're in full control really of what's going on ahead of you. So if you can move or anticipate what the opposition are going to do in that given moment, then it certainly helps you to save less balls in a game, because you're positioning your defenders where the trouble you see will be. And that trust, and Dalo mentioned it there, like if I was going to war, all the fullbacks I've played behind are the ones I take with me first, because they're your real partner. They're your brothers on the edge of the square. And if you ask them to stand in their head as a goalie, they might bark at you, but they'll do it. And that's the key. And that trust and relationship with your defence is also a huge part of success for a goalie. And I think it does give you confidence that players will do what you ask them to do because they believe in your decision making.
That I was wondering then, Anthony, how was Davy's relationship with his defenders? Obviously, himself and Lohan had their conversations
back
then.
Not today. Back then, not today.
Yeah, back then, like he was obviously a barker, but like, was there ever an occasion where he might have crossed the line and he'd have to apologise to you after a game, or where you'd ever reel it in? You know?
Mikey, have you had much coffee this morning? Davy, apologise. He doesn't apologise unless he's up with the DRA or one of them, the ICCCC. No, look, I know he, like as Brendan said, there is an element of being, you know, a little bit freakish. I'd call most of them that I played with club level as well. If Noel Considine or Tommy Hagerty are watching this, fruitcakes, nearly all of them. And they needed to be, you know, They ultimately, if I played cornerback, which I did early in my career, Fitzy might still save my bacon, like, but there was no one to save Fitzy's bacon, you know. Yeah. So you needed to be selfish, and I would have seen it over the years as well, especially in management. When I managed Fitzy, I suppose a couple of sub-goalies with him. But you needn't never have worried about his work ethos, you know. Okay, I mightn't ask him to run 15 laps, or some management would insist on that, and Brendan, you'd have probably been better set up for that kind of athletic, being a footballer and a real athlete. Like, he wasn't a really, strong athlete, but the work he would do himself. And, I remember coming to Dublin then, and probably my two keepers of Dublin were Gary Maguire and Al Nolan, and at the beginning, I would say the work ethos for training specific for keepers wasn't anywhere high enough. And I used to bring Christy O'Connor into the car at me and bring him up and get them working. And like Christy, I could hear Christy barking down the other end, like they'd have 3/4 of an hour goalkeeping training and maybe join in the main session then. And Christy would be violent coming home in the car. But then 2 to 3 months in, they had bought in completely, both of them, whereas they'd nearly get the train down to Limerick, and Christy would collect them, and they'd do a session out in Flannans and Ennis, and Christy drop them back into the train. So, yeah, once I think the training the keepers do now is incredible, and I saw that as well when I was involved at the Limerick Underage Academy, because, specifically we'd have 15, 16 minor goalies. You could have 9 goalies, and you could have a goalkeeping session completely separate to the whole academy session on the day. And it's really improved, I'd say, Brendan, from when you started even.
Yeah, I had asked him my last year in 2013. I had a good chat with Eamon O'Shea, and I said I wanted to try to get Christy in to coach me, and just to see, and because it was evolving and developing, before training for me, goalkeeping coaching was, I'd arrive on at 6:15, I'd be on the pitch at 6:30, and Hot Pint to come out with me and hit a few balls at me, and that's kind of what training was, goalkeeping coaching was to me. At the end of training, I'd hang around and do a little bit more myself and head down to the field with the father. But nowadays it's a science, and there's no doubt about it, and players goalies are starting to get the benefit of it. And now if a goalie walks in the inter-county team, he's nearly heading towards where's the goalkeeping coach. Do you know what I mean? He's kind of like
when did you
walk across the pitch.
When would you have noticed the change, Brendan? I mean, your career, I think, spanned maybe nearly 18, 19 years into county level, which is extraordinary. But when would you have noticed a change? And even we'll say, what would you consider now the primary role of a goalkeeper? Is it shot stopper, or is it distribution, or is it a mix of both? And when would you have noticed lamping the puck out, as far as you can go? When did that sort of change? Was it Cusack maybe who kind of would have led the charge on that? Or when would you notice that culture shift?
I noticed it one night above in training when Paul Kelly, who played wing back for us, said to me, why can't you hit the ball to my hand like Cusick does when there's no one marking me? He hit the ball to John Gardner and he's scoring points. Why can't you do that for me, lads? Right? So that was the first warning shot that I thanked John Lowe for in my head when I'll tell you one thing. But anyway, the next thing for me was the big change was the relationship between the goalie and the receiver of the ball. And Eamon O'Shea really was the one who lit that up, that got that communication going, because there was always a disconnect, weird as it was, that I lamped it down the pitch and the 50-50 ball, get on the brakes, lads, and we hope for the best. But then Eamon said, right, he drew boxes on the pitch. There was 4 places in particular I had to hit the ball. I had to learn to hit the ball into that box. Eventually the box got about 5 yards square. And then he told the forwards to run into those areas. So he gave each forward a place to run into. Now, I wasn't aware of what he was doing with the forwards, but I just knew my role was to put it into the box. And then someone else went and got it. And I think that kind of conversation he was doing now becomes part of a tactic session with teams where they go, we're going to do this run and that run. And when he goes there, you go here. And, and they all work in a kind of a good flow and a relationship with each other. But I think definitely the role of the goalkeeper is evolving, because the stats guy is saying how many puck outs have you retained. So if you're in competition against another goalie, you want your stats to be high. So you're driving that conversation now with the forwards, because you need more than 60% puck out success. Because if you don't get it, the guy who sits in the cockpit the following week might get it. So I think it's driving good behaviour. So for me, I'm still old-fashioned. I think the goalie's primary role is to stop the ball, because a goal nowadays in hurling is probably worth 5 points, the way the tactics and all are gone and the way teams are playing. So I do think primarily, but the X factor for goalies now certainly is, can you put the ball on a sixpence? And certainly they all can. And what drove me as well is, I suppose, Darren Gleeson particularly good on the puck outs. That was his thing. So I needed to get way better at that area of my game to keep him off my back. So I was engaging completely with Eamon O'Shea as to how this was going to happen. I was training by myself. I was strapping cameras to goalposts to slow-mo my swing. I changed the way I hit the ball. I had a stock swing then. Everything had to change, like golf. And once I did that, then I was consistently hitting the ball better. But the stimulus for that change was Eamon O'Shea, and knowing that if I set the tone right on the puck out, our forwards and midfielders could play better. And the penny dropped with me, and he helped us talk to each other to get it right.
That's fascinating. You stopped just short of getting a swing coach by the sounds of things.
Well, I did. I put the phone onto the goalpost, and I just swung, and I put poles out the pitch, and I put hula hoops on top of poles and tried to hit the ball through the hula hoop. So that's what I was trying to do. And when it went through it more consistently, I was getting 6 and 7 out of 10. That was my stock swing, and I had nailed it. But it was every night hitting 50 and 60 hurling balls by myself down the field in Ballybacon, hoping nobody saw me because they'd take me away in a butterfly net.
That must be a completely different swing then from the swing that won you all those puck fadas. It's a completely different
yes,
swing.
That was close your eyes and grind your teeth up. Tipperary supporters will tell you that swing cost us matches for about 15 years until I changed it.
Jesus, and I suppose we can Daly would how much of that kind of training would the likes of Maguire and Nolan done in Dublin? Would there have been a lot of that? Would you've got that technical, or would you left that to them?
Yeah, they would have. Yeah, once the penny dropped, I think they both really worked on that. Gary, it was a bit like that with Gary and Alan, even though Alan had a massive puck of the ball, and he was more inclined and willing to a shot. And I think Gary had to adapt like that because a bit like Darren being behind you, Brendan, Alan was pushing that way, and tactics were gone that way. Our third keeper was a very good young goalkeeper. Unfortunately for him, he was from Ballyboden as well, Finn McGarry. He would have won Leinster under 21, a couple of them, I think. And one of the gas things was, I remember we took the 21s as well as the seniors, myself and Richie and the lads, and Hedjo. But we played the Kilkenny Intermediates one time before in All-Ireland under 21 semi-final. And I remember going down behind the goal. Richie was actually the manager technically, and Finn was in goal. And you know, Brendan, there's certain fellas you're very comfortable going short to because you know their touch is really good.
First touch.
Don't really keep it away from me. Nearly turned their back on you.
Good, yeah.
They walked away. But I remember Finn hitting a couple of lads that, like, the Kilkenny Intermediates were on top of him straight away. Dispossession, maybe a point or a free in or something. So I just went down and I said, Finn, are you happy enough hitting it to so-and-so? And he says, yeah, sure, he was loose, Dalo. But I says, you know him longer than I do as a hurler. You know, would you be happier hitting that ball to Liam Rush at centre back, who'll fetch it and move with it? And even if he spills it, he's that strong, you know, he'll get it back. Or Martin Quilty was another one that was good touch, you know. Whereas there was other guys who were saying, Finn, is this the percentage we got to play here? So there was all that, but it was there's so many guys. You just look at Wexford at the moment, like so many of them so comfortable with taking that short puck out. And I'd imagine their retention figures on the stats then, as you spoke about, Brendan, would be savagely high. And sometimes you, as an opposition coach, you might have to ignore that a little bit because you know that they're very short to a cornerback, and a cornerback is just, you know, he's been allowed to have it by the opposition. We kind of did it to you a bit in 2-11 with the
2-11,
mentioned Paul Curran. We just said Paul I admired as a man marking full back like no other really in his era. You know, he was fantastic. I mean, nobody got a puck off him really, but I just felt he really didn't want to be getting short puck outs and trying to pick out a man 50, 60 yards. So we said, right lads, whoever was in there, Dottie and Paul Ryan, I said, you just guess. Michael Carroll, and I'm not sure was it Paddy Saint was in the other corner?
Mikey Carroll and Saint,
Yeah, I said, look, they're not to get it. Let Curran get it and then close him down and make him force it to hand pass it to one of the boys. And to a large extent, we stayed in the game. You beat us 4 points, fair enough. But for us, I suppose at that stage of where we had won the league, all right. But you know, I think Larry got a soft goal early on, really. You know, we were kind of delighted with the way that worked out. But I wouldn't like to take away from Paul in any way on that. But
no, it is that's the way it is. I mean, and that's where tactics have come in the way it changes the behaviours. And goalkeepers now, I think, have to be even more educated on the way the game goes. Like, and that game of chess. Like, I've been involved with teams and I've seen it. Like you saw it earlier this year with Laois. They gave the puck out to James Barry, hit a ball of his own. Obviously, Eddie Brennan identified before the game it's okay if James Barry gets the ball, and that's that's not been hurtful to him as a person. It's just him as a stick man, we'll call it. And that's a decision that's made. Like, you know, every manager up and down the country. But I do feel sorry for that cornerback who's standing on his own going, why am I by myself the whole time? It's because they don't think they're any good is the answer to that question. It's hard. Like.
Clare tried to imply something similar in the Munster final. Was it two years ago, Dalo, when they allowed Damien Cahalane with the ball, and he actually did a bit of damage, didn't he?
Hugely backfired, Rory, I'd say, you know, because I think, you know, what people only figured out in the last 3-4 years about Damien was how quick he was.
Yeah, his pace.
Oh my God, the speed of the guy. When he gets, I mean, and we'll all remember the short one that was allowed to go to him, and he took off, and Shane O'Donnell was behind him, and we'd all think Shane O'Donnell, speed. And like he just went 1 yard, 2 yards, 3 yards away from Shane O'Donnell, poked it up. I think it was Alan Cadigan was out in front.
Correct. He laid it off.
Massive solo and popped it to Hoggy and over the bar. And I think, you know, the Clare fans were really frustrated that day that whatever about letting Cahalane get it, and it's very hard to change midway through a game, of course. We all know that. You get your 10 minutes at half time that you might be able to change something, but during the game, trying to get a message that you've planned for 3 weeks, and me trying to get a message up to you, Brendan, to say, switch that, it's not working. It's very difficult then to know where to go. So I think Clare were kind of caught between a rock and a hard place that day, that they'd made a plan. It was obviously backfiring, and it was very hard to rectify on the day.
I'm not seeing this happening as much in the game as a goalie now. It would have happened to us. We played Clare in Limerick in, I think it was 08 or 09. It was 09. We're playing against the wind. And I remember sending a message up to Owen Kelly because the Clare puck outs were dropping, we'll say, behind Declan Fanning and between him and Paddy Saint, and the two of them were getting caught in each other under. So I remember sending a message up to Owen Kelly to go down like he was killed. So Owen went down anyway, holding his head or whatever he had to hold on to the time to stop the play. And I called a meeting of all the backs. So all the backs came in and we had a chat. It only took about 30 seconds now to say, look, you need to sit deeper, get the wing forward to sit back deeper, and it fixed the problem. So, like, it's trying to get that stoppage in play is the key. And on the short puck out, it's an absolute killer when the full forward or someone in the full forward line can't stop the guy coming out, because once they break the tackle, there's an overlap. And Cahalane did that day, athletic, strong in the tackle, got through. And once he got into open field, all hell breaks loose then, because your sweeper's dead duck standing on the edge of the D the other side with an overlap coming up the field against him.
Cheers, lads. I tell you, he mightn't have always agreed, Brendan, with Babs, but I tell you, the old trickery, the tip crowd never leaves them. Get a message up to Kelly to get down and get the helmet off and get the backs in around him to get the message up to me.
You have to have a chat, like, you know what I mean? You just have to have a chat sometimes.
That's impressive.
Brendan, what, just because I've never had an opportunity to ask you about this anyway, and I think it would be interesting for people to hear. I can't remember exactly the All-Ireland semi-final that it was, but I think it would be interesting just to get a bit of insight into it. You were playing Kilkenny, it was Tip Kilkenny. I think, I'm going to guess, was it 03? The 03 semi? Yeah. Where you had just one of those games where I think... I said about 25 shots and they couldn't. No, they got a goal in the end. Was it Tommy Walsh actually? I think got the goal. Was it?
Yeah, it was. Tommy got the goal. Yeah, and the finish up. Yeah, but I dropped the ball to start to cause the problem. We won't ponder too long on that particular one. And just all the backs are running around the place. I don't know what they were doing. They were just doing a bleep test in their head or something, because they were running from cone to cone. They weren't going near the ball, and just Kilkenny had shot after shot, and eventually.
Was that Tommy, the 03 semi? Was.
Pardon?
Was that the 03 semi-final? It was?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And
then Henry, of course. What?
I wasn't involved at all that year. I wasn't with Clare. It was kind of a year I was just back doing a small bit of hurling with Clarecastle, but I was running my own pub, Murty's, and we were down the All-Ireland semi-finals, a huge crowd in and everyone watching. That passage of play had the pub gasping.
Yeah, it was just save.
You know, and eventually Jesus, it was an amazing passage. Sticks out in my mind, being out in the lounge part of the bar and everyone going, you know,
saving it again.
A couple of questions for you, Brendan, before we finish up. The first one's a kind of obvious one, I suppose, but you were discussing a couple of them there, but your own favourite save, there's a double against Waterford in the Munster semi-final in 2004, and then the other one that's often mentioned is the one against Henry Shefflin in the 2009 league final, I think it was. Will either of those be your favourite, or is there another one that sticks in your mind?
Yeah, they're probably the two. I mean, saving it from Paul Flynn or Henry Shefflin, they're real stickmen, like, you know, they'll give you the eyes. Like Henry that day, I had a feeling when he caught the ball, he looked over his left shoulder, he went to turn right, and then he poked it back over his left shoulder. So I had a bit of a feeling that he might be going there, but it's an amazing, actually, when I think back on it. I can never remember myself diving. I can always remember myself hitting the ground. So it's a bit like muscle memory. It just happens. Like I don't ever remember a dive and save where I said, I'm going to dive here now and tip it around the post. It just instinctively, and Dale, you'll probably find the same. You might catch a ball and drive it into a fella, and afterwards you're looking at the hurley going, geez, did I really do that? You know, and there's a lot of that in it for me now when I think back in my mind's eye of saves like that. It just happens, and your body, because of the train you do, the muscle memory, the way you pick the right file out of your head to do the dive, it all happens in that split second. So, and then you move on, like, you know what I mean? I suppose that's why the training and us goalies are so paranoid, and it helps us to drive on in training, that if you do it right and do it often enough, it just instinctively happens on match day. And those saves are certainly probably the highlights for me. But I can't remember diddly squat of either of them, to be honest with you.
And then we'll ask you all this now, because I think we have to accept that Brendan Cummins has won the popular vote and also won the vote on this podcast. So who, Brendan, would be, you think, the best goalkeeper currently playing the game?
Owen Murphy is the man for me. He's just consistency. I've said it before on the Sunday game. He's angry, like he's roaring at you out through the face mask. He's Davy. He's defying you. Come on, I dare you to take a shot. And then when the ball hits the net, what? It's depressing for a forward. I think when the ball hits the net, he just turns around, gets a new hurley, looks out to puck it out again, as if to say, well, you got one, but we're still going to bait you anyway. So there's no dramatics out of him. He's a ball of energy, and he's a joy to watch, to be honest with you. I love watching Owen Murphy playing the goals. Yeah,
he's very stubborn, isn't he? And you can tell he's like Brian Cody on the field. You can tell it actually pains him when Kilkenny lose. Like, very few others jump 3 yards over the crossbar to stop a point. Like, he's that kind of.
He is, and he's a leader. Yeah, he's a leader as well. Of people I've spoken to, whether he's been below in the college, hurling and in Waterford or wherever he's been the one in the dressing room when the thing is going wrong at half time, who stands up in the middle of everyone, one of his peers, and says, right, it stops now. This is how we're going to stop it. We're not doing enough. He delivers hard messages to players. They take it on board. They don't take it as being a personal insult. They take it as being the kick in the backside is meant for. And that's the real sign of a leader, when he can stand up among his peers, call out the issues, and then say, right, let's get going together. And then they all do in the second half. And that's the other strand that he gives you. And Dalo will appreciate that more being a manager. When someone stands up like that, especially your goalie, it infuses huge confidence among the players. Like.
Daly, Anthony, would you agree? Owen Murphy, is there anyone else that stands out for you?
I would. I have to say, I like a lot of them. I have to say Nash. I still like him. I know maybe people feel he's kind of in the autumn of the career now. And Stephen O'Keefe, I've often said, like, he's a little dog, a lovely dog now, is a year old. But we had to get one of those electric things to keep her in, and often said I'd like to get one of those for Stephen O'Keefe. But I actually think Mark Fleming is a great keeper as well. I really like him, and I think he's adapting to Davy's style as well, really well. But Murph is like a seventh defender, like completely. Like it's just so comfortable there. Like obviously with Hugh Lennon, new full back, and it's but just to have Murph behind you must be massive boost. He's just so comfortable coming out, hitting long range frees. You expect him to score them. His reflexes are really good. And again, I think that whole experience of being a midfielder for his club is a real help to him. And I got to know him on an all-star trip to the States. I didn't really know him at all. And real sound fella as well, real kind of rounded guy. As you said, Brendan, I can just imagine him in the dressing room. You'd know more about that end of it. I wouldn't have known those details, but I can imagine it, as you said it there, that he would be a real leader in that group.
So not as big a headbanger as your average goalkeeper then, no?
Oh, he's a headbanger. Oh, don't get me wrong. Like, you just look at his Twitter account, scroll through that. He's there. But what he is, though, is he has a belief in what he wants to say, whether it's in a Twitter page or whether it's in a dressing room, and he says it. And to hell with you after that, whatever you think. He's a lovely lad. I met him above at the Boris League game now, we'll say, and he's been above on the puck fide and all. And all for the Paddy Saints family and all, and he's a lovely lad, like, but the eyes are dancing in his head, and that's what you need. That's the X factor.
All right, on that wonderful note, we'll leave it. I'd like to thank the two lads for joining us in particular, and Rory, and congratulations to Brendan, the all-star goalkeeper of the Sunday game era.
Congrats, Brendan.
Unreal, yeah. I'll go out training again now. Do a few laps. Yeah.
We're gonna keep this going over the next few weeks, and we'll probably get the two boys on to talk about one of the other lines. We won't let Daly on to talk about the half-back line though, because that wouldn't be right.
Hope I'll be getting it anyway.
I didn't want to say.
Do we get number 2s from Belly Bacon?
Oh no, you'll get all our transfers now. I'm over the line. I'm elected. You're next, boy. The drive is on.
There's plenty of GAA content still on the RTÉ website and the News Now app. Sunday Sport is back this Sunday for 2 hours, and Rory has been working on a boatload of archive, and we're going to have plenty of that on RTÉ TV in the not too distant future. So stay tuned to RTÉ's channels. We'll help get each other through this. So once again, thanks to the lads, and we will see you again in a couple of days, hopefully. Thanks very much.
Goodbye. Stay safe, everyone.
Good luck. Yeah.
Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar.